Something is shifting faster than your mind can fully process, and whether you feel ready or not, you are already standing at the edge of a moment that will demand something real from you. Because in less than 48 hours, the universe is not gently nudging you forward. It is placing a challenge directly in your path, one that feels personal, almost as if it has been designed with your exact fears, your exact desires, and your exact potential in mind. And what makes this different from every other astrological movement you have heard about is that this is not passive energy. This is not something you can observe from a distance and then move on with your life unchanged. This is a confrontation, a moment where the cosmos is no longer whispering, but speaking clearly, asking you in a way that cannot be ignored if you are truly ready to act on everything you have been holding back. And what most people fail to recognize is that this moment did not suddenly appear. It has been forming quietly beneath the surface of your daily life, disguised as tension, disguised as setbacks, disguised as those moments where you felt like you were so close to moving forward, only to be stopped again and again. And again, and if you look back honestly, you will see that the past few weeks have not felt smooth or easy. They have felt dense, almost like you were walking through something invisible that kept slowing you down. And that sensation was not random. It was not bad luck. It was pressure being applied, with precision shaping you, refining you, forcing you to confront where you were not yet aligned. And now that pressure has reached a point where it can no longer stay contained. It is building toward release. And that is why you may feel this restless urgency inside you, this push to move, to decide to act. Even if you cannot yet name exactly what direction you are meant to take, and that internal tension is not confusion. It is activation. It is your system responding to something very real that is about to unfold. Because on May 4th, at 10 at night, two of the most dominant forces in astrology form a square, a 90-degree angle that is known not for comfort, but for friction, not for ease, but for movement. And this is not a weak or subtle interaction. This is Mars and Jupiter, both operating at their highest strength. Mars positioned in Aries, the sign where its energy becomes direct, fearless, and immediate, where hesitation disappears and action becomes instinct, where the part of you that waits for approval is replaced by something far more primal and decisive, and at the same time, Jupiter is in Cancer, the place where its expansive nature becomes deeply rooted, emotional and powerful, in a way that is not just about opportunity, but about building something meaningful and lasting, something that supports your sense of safety and purpose. So when these two forces collide through a square, it creates a level of internal and external pressure that cannot be ignored. It demands movement. It demands choice. It demands that you step forward, even if part of you still feels uncertain. And this is why the next few days carry the potential to completely redirect your path, because this is not just about energy increasing. It is about everything that has been held back, suddenly pushing forward at once. And to understand why this feels so intense, you have to go back to what was happening around April 19th. A time when things may have felt unusually heavy, when progress slowed down, when every attempt to move forward seemed to meet resistance. And that was the influence of Mars meeting Saturn, a configuration that creates restriction, discipline, and delay, where the desire to act is confronted by the requirement to be ready. And Saturn does not deny without reason, it delays in order to strengthen it, blocks in order to refine. And during that period, you are being forced to confront your weak points, your impatience, your tendency to rush before your foundation was stable. And that experience may have felt frustrating, even discouraging, but it was necessary. Because without that compression, without that period of holding back, you would not be able to handle what is about to be released. And now, as this Mars-Jupiter square approaches, all of that stored energy begins to surge forward, like something that has been contained for too long, finally finding its way out. And the intensity you feel is directly connected to how much you have been holding inside, how much you have been preparing without realizing it. And this is where the real question emerges, because this is not just about whether opportunity appears. It is about whether you are able to direct that surge of energy with clarity, instead of letting it scatter into impulsive decisions or missed chances. And that is the deeper meaning behind this moment. It is not simply asking you to act, it is asking you to act with intention, with awareness, with the understanding that what you choose now has the power to create a turning point. And as this pressure reaches its peak, what you are being asked becomes clearer, not louder, but sharper, more focused, more undeniable, leading you directly into the heart of the challenge itself. Not everyone is invited into a moment like this. Not everyone is pushed to the edge with this kind of intensity. So if you are still here listening, if something inside you reacted the second this message began, that reaction itself is part of the signal, because this is not random exposure. This is alignment. And what is unfolding right now is not a general influence drifting through the collective. It is a direct call aimed at individuals who are ready to be confronted with a deeper truth about themselves. And that truth arrives through the Mars and Jupiter square as a question that does not allow you to hide behind comfort or delay it. Asks whether you are truly willing to place your own future in your own hands. Not in theory, not at some undefined point later, but immediately with real consequences, attached with outcomes that can either elevate you or challenge you in ways that will force growth. Because the energy moving through this alignment does not respond to hesitation. It does not support waiting for certainty. It responds to movement, to decisive action taken in the presence of uncertainty. And this is where many people misunderstand what is being offered because they think they need more clarity before they begin. They think they need guarantees before they commit. But this configuration does not operate on guarantees. It operates on courage, and Mars, in Aries, amplifies that truth by stripping away the need for external validation. It pushes you toward action that is immediate and instinctive, while Jupiter in Cancer introduces a deeper layer, reminding you that expansion without emotional grounding is empty, that growth becomes meaningful only when it is rooted in something authentic, something that reflects who you actually are beneath the surface, and the square between them creates the tension that defines this entire moment. It forces you to hold both energies at once, to act boldly, while remaining aligned with something real, to move forward without losing awareness of what truly matters. And this is why the pressure feels so personal, because it is not just asking you to act, it is asking you to choose wisely where you direct that action. And if you remember the restless feeling that has been building inside you, that urge to move, to change something, to finally break out of whatever has been holding you in place, this is where it comes from. It is not confusion, and it is not instability. It is activation at a biological level. Your system responding to a surge of energy that is impossible to suppress. And this is why your thoughts may feel faster, your emotions more intense, your impulses stronger than usual, because the Mars-Jupiter square is not subtle. It stimulates your entire being, creating a sense that standing still is no longer sustainable, that something must shift. And this can manifest in very different ways depending on how you process it. For some, it feels like excitement, like a sudden clarity that pushes them toward new opportunities, while for others, it feels like agitation, like a buildup of pressure that demands release. But both experiences point to the same underlying reality. You are being moved out of stagnation. And the critical factor now is not whether you feel the energy, but how you direct it, because without focus, this force becomes scattered, leading to overcommitment, burnout, and the illusion of progress without real results. And that is where the deeper challenge reveals itself. The invitation is not simply to take action. It is to take intentional action, to choose one direction that aligns with your deeper values and commit to it fully, rather than dispersing your energy across multiple paths that lead nowhere. And as this shift intensifies, certain individuals will feel it more directly, particularly those with strong Aries, Virgo, or Scorpio placements, because they are positioned at a point where this energy intersects with their personal evolution in a way that can redefine long-term direction. And if you fall into one of these groups, what unfolds over the next few days is not just another passing experience. It is a turning point that has the potential to reshape the next decade of your life, especially for Aries, where the impact becomes deeply personal. Because since April 19th, you have been navigating a period of restriction and internal questioning as Mars encountered Saturn in your first house, forcing you to slow down to confront doubts about your identity, your capabilities, and your direction. And that phase may have felt limiting, even discouraging, but it was refining you, strengthening your foundation in ways that were not immediately visible. And now, as May 4th approaches, Mars forms a square with Jupiter in your fourth house, creating a moment where internal stability and external action collide. And this is where everything begins to align, where the hesitation that once held you back starts to dissolve, where the version of yourself that was uncertain gives way to one that is more grounded, more focused, and more prepared to take decisive steps forward. And the opportunities that follow may seem sudden, but they are not random. They are the direct result of the preparation you have been moving through, manifesting as leadership roles, career advancements, or bold initiatives that require you to step into a higher level of responsibility. And in this process, you may notice that people who once overlooked you begin to recognize your potential, not because they have changed, but because you have. And this shift in perception becomes part of the larger transformation that is now unfolding, carrying you into the next phase of this experience. There is a fire moving through you now that does not ask for permission to exist, and for some of you, it is already beginning to strip away the parts of yourself that once felt like permanent limitations. Because what you used to call insecurity is starting to lose its grip under the intensity of this moment, and for Aries especially, this is where everything turns inward before it expands outward. Because while it may look like success arriving from the outside, the real shift is happening at the level of identity as Jupiter moves through your fourth house. It is not simply opening doors in your external world. It is reinforcing something far more foundational. It is asking you to finally feel safe within yourself, to build an internal stability that does not collapse when circumstances change. And this is why the breakthrough you are stepping into is not just about achievements or recognition. It is about becoming someone who no longer questions their own worth every time a challenge appears. It is about standing on ground so solid that even uncertainty cannot shake you. And as this transformation takes hold, you begin to realize that the comeback you have been waiting for is not a return to who you were before the setbacks. It is an emergence into a version of yourself that has been forged through pressure, through restraint, through everything that once made you doubt your own strength. And that is why, when opportunities begin to appear, they feel different. They feel aligned. They feel like they are meeting a version of you that is finally ready to hold them. And as this momentum builds, the focus shifts toward Virgo, where a completely different kind of awakening is taking place, one that targets the mind itself. Because Virgo, you have spent so much time refining, analyzing, adjusting, perfecting every detail, until movement itself became delayed, until progress was replaced by preparation, and now that pattern is reaching its breaking point. Because with Jupiter positioned in your 11th house, the expansion has already been quietly forming in your networks, in your long-term visions, in the possibilities that exist just beyond your comfort zone. And Mars in your 8th house becomes the force that disrupts your hesitation. It pushes you into action that feels exposed, that feels visible, that forces you to engage with the world before you feel completely ready. And this is where the shift becomes undeniable, because the work you have been doing behind the scenes begins to surface, gaining recognition, attracting attention from people who can open doors you did not expect. And what once felt like something private suddenly becomes something that others can see and respond to. And yet beneath all of this movement, there is a deeper confrontation happening, one that challenges your relationship with control, with the need to perfect everything before allowing it to exist. And this is where the realization hits you: we're never as unprepared as you believed. You were holding yourself back out of fear of being seen before you could guarantee the outcome. And now the pace of opportunity accelerates to a point where overthinking is no longer an option, forcing you to trust what you have already built within yourself. And as this wave continues, it carries us into Scorpio, where the intensity reaches a level that is both transformative and deeply personal. Because Scorpio, you are not new to change. You embody it. But this particular alignment touches something that goes beyond surface-level adjustments as Mars moves through your sixth house. It begins to disrupt the routines, the patterns, the structures that have defined your daily existence, while Jupiter, in your ninth house, expands your awareness towards something greater, something that calls you beyond the limitations you have been living within. And the tension between these two forces creates a breaking point where the life you have been maintaining no longer fits the vision you are beginning to see. And this is where the past starts to release its hold, where the struggles you have endured, the emotional weight you have carried, begins to transform into clarity, into direction, into a sense that everything you have gone through was shaping you for this exact moment. And while external improvements, such as career growth or financial opportunities, may begin to appear, the deeper shift is internal. It is the release of psychological burdens that once defined your sense of safety. It is the gradual softening of the need to control every outcome, and the reawakening of trust, not in others alone, but in the process of your own evolution. And as this transformation unfolds, it becomes clear that this is not a recovery from failure. It is a rise from survival, a movement into a phase where your resilience becomes a source of power that drives continuous growth. And yet, as powerful as all of this is, there is a layer of risk that cannot be ignored, because the same energy that fuels breakthroughs also carries the potential for imbalance if it is not handled with awareness. As Mars in Aries amplifies confidence to a point where it can feel limitless, and Jupiter in Cancer expands belief in positive outcomes to a level that may overlook practical limitations. And when these two forces combine, they can create a mindset that equates boldness with invulnerability, leading to decisions that are driven more by impulse than intention. And this is where people begin to overextend themselves, taking on more than they can realistically sustain, making abrupt changes without considering long-term consequences, confusing rapid movement with meaningful progress. And this is why this moment requires a different kind of courage. Not just the courage to act, but the courage to pause and ask whether the action you are about to take is aligned with something real or simply a reaction to the pressure building within you. Because the challenge being presented is not about abandoning structure or ignoring preparation. It is about integrating boldness with clarity, ensuring that every step forward is both intentional and grounded. And as you stand at this threshold, the most important question is not whether you will move, but whether you will move in a way that truly serves the direction you are meant to follow next. Before you move forward, there is a moment of honesty that cannot be skipped, a question that cuts through all the excitement and urgency and forces you to face what is actually driving your next step. Because right now you are standing between two very different motivations that can look identical on the surface. One is expansion towards something meaningful and aligned with your deeper vision, and the other is escape from discomfort, from pressure, from the unease that has been building inside you. And if you do not pause long enough to feel the difference, you risk mistaking reaction for intention. And that is where this energy becomes dangerous, because the same force that can elevate your life can also push you into decisions that drain you, overwhelm you and leave you scattered instead of focused. So you have to ask yourself with clarity whether what you are about to do can be sustained over time, or whether it is simply a temporary release of tension that will lead to burnout. Because the individuals who truly navigate this Mars and Jupiter square with success are not the ones who act the fastest. They are the ones who understand how to combine boldness with awareness, who are willing to move forward but refuse to do so without direction. They take action, but they choose their target first, and that distinction changes everything. So as you begin to work with this energy, the first principle becomes essential. You must commit to one decisive move, not multiple scattered attempts, not a list of ambitions that dilute your focus, but one clear direction that holds the potential to transform your current reality. Because this surge of energy will tempt you to do everything at once, to say yes to every opportunity, to chase every possibility. And that is exactly how it loses its power. Real breakthroughs do not come from divided attention. They come from sustained effort directed toward a single meaningful objective. So you identify the one action that would create the greatest shift, and you begin there. And as you move forward, the second principle becomes equally important. You build stability at the same time as you expand, because Jupiter moving through Cancer does not support growth that lacks foundation. It demands that everything you create is supported by something solid beneath it: your emotional stability, your environment, your internal sense of security. And this means you do not abandon your base while reaching for something new. You strengthen it. You reinforce the systems that allow you to sustain what you are building. You take care of the parts of your life that hold everything together, so that when expansion comes, it does not collapse under its own weight. And as you continue this process, the third reality reveals itself. Resistance is not a sign that you are on the wrong path. It is a natural outcome of this kind of alignment, because squares create friction. They create tension that forces growth. So when obstacles appear, when doubt from others surfaces, when progress feels uneven or slower than expected, that is not failure. That is confirmation that you are engaging with something that matters. And the difference now is whether you interpret that resistance as a reason to stop or as part of the process that strengthens your direction. Because the outcomes that truly change your life are never effortless. They require persistence through discomfort. And finally, there is one more factor that determines whether this energy becomes a breakthrough or a setback. And that is humility. Because the moment you begin to believe that you are beyond limitation, that nothing can go wrong, that every impulse should be followed without question, you disconnect from the awareness that keeps your actions grounded. And this alignment, as powerful as it is, does not remove the need for discipline. It amplifies the consequences of your choices. So you stay aware. You stay intentional. You respect the process rather than trying to dominate it. And as you move through this moment, it becomes clear that what is happening on May 4th is not a conclusion. It is the starting point of something much larger that has been unfolding throughout this entire year. Because the broader astrological climate has been shifting from a period dominated by earth and water energies, where introspection, caution, and internal work defined the pace, into a new phase influenced by fire and air, where action, expression, and expansion take priority. And this Mars and Jupiter square becomes the first major release of that transition, the moment where everything that has been building internally begins to move outward, signaling that the phase of waiting and preparing is ending, and the phase of creating and building is beginning. And this means that the decision you make in this window is not isolated. It connects you to a larger momentum that can carry forward for months or even years. And those who recognize this shift for what it is, who respond with both courage and clarity, will look back on this period as the moment where everything changed direction. And now, as the pressure continues to rise and the energy becomes more intense, you are left with a choice that cannot be avoided. Whether you will allow fear and doubt to delay you once again, or whether you will trust yourself enough to move forward even without certainty. Whether you will wait for perfect conditions that may never arrive, or whether you will step into the unknown with intention and awareness, understanding that growth always involves risk. And as you stand here with less than 48 hours remaining, the invitation is clear. This is not just another day passing by, it is a threshold, a moment where you are being asked to step into a version of your life that requires more from you, but also offers more in return. And the opportunity will not remain open indefinitely. So the only question that truly matters now is whether you are willing to respond to what is being asked of you and take the step that you already feel inside yourself is necessary, because the call has already been made, and your response will define what comes next.